A new report by the UN panel on climate change says the goal to limit temperature rises is nowhere near its target, and the world is heading towards an increase of 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. Now, according to the report, an increase of even half a degree above the agreed limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius will increase the risk of drought, floods, and extreme weather. Carbon dioxide emissions need to fall 45% by 2030 to keep global warming at around 1.5 degrees. Now, worldwide reductions are needed in energy, industry and transport. The report was released as global emissions are on the rise again. While they were flat in 2015 and 2016, last year saw an increase of 2.1%, and the UN says this figure is likely to rise even more in 2018.
So there's extreme urgency, and countries were giving their pledges after the Paris Agreement, and so far the progress hasn't been good enough that we would move towards 1.5 or 2 degrees targets. But we have this 30 years window now to stop using fossil energy, and if we do so, then we could stay at the 1.5 degree limit. So that's not impossible, but it's a major challenge.
Joining me now from London is Alexandre Koberle. He's a research associate in Mitigation Technologies at the Grantham Institute. Alexandre, great to have you on Money Talks. Thanks for joining us. Now, according to scientists convened by the United Nations, the world must invest $2.4 trillion in clean energy every year through 2035 and cut the use of coal-fired power to almost nothing by 2050. To avoid catastrophic damage from climate change. Are we anywhere near these goals?
Well, definitely the next 10 years are critical for the success of climate mitigation, climate action in the world. The IEA says that we're spending about $1.8 trillion a year in energy, and so that would mean about a 30% increase over current levels. So it is possible to increase that level. And it's also important to remember that investments in clean energy, low carbon technologies would also bring co-benefits in terms of lower air pollution, cleaner water, and also would reduce the impacts of climate change, because we have to remember that doing nothing today is not free of costs, because the impacts of higher emissions on the climate system will mean that we will be facing some costs in terms of adapting to these changes, and maybe sea level rise or extreme events will have a higher probability of, and it will definitely impact the economy negatively. So we can have a balance there.
Alexandre, do you think that there are enough incentives for the private sector to invest as much as is needed in order to bring emission levels down?
Well, currently, no. Not yet, but there are policies are starting to move in that direction. We've seen the EU emission trading scheme that was implemented last decade. It was not extremely successful for a variety of reasons that we don't have time to go into, but that price is starting to recover. And we also see in places like, for example, even the United States, if you look at California, there is a host of policies that have been very successful in moving the energy system towards lower carbon, like particularly the renewable portfolio that was implemented in California some years back. Also, wind and solar prices have dropped considerably. So it is also economically feasible to move to low carbon technologies and actually save money. It is actually becoming more and more competitive.
Right. You mentioned emissions trading. Professor Nordhaus, the Nobel laureate, is a fan of carbon taxes. Do they work?
Well, they would definitely make a difference, absolutely, but they would not solve everything. They're not a silver bullet that would suddenly take us in the direction of 1.5 degrees. They would certainly be moving some types of investments into lower emission territory. But we need to also have other instruments, other types of economic instruments, like subsidies are important. They have been very central in bringing down the cost of renewable energy.
Right.
And RD&D is particularly important,
Right.
research, development, and demonstration. Those are also very important subsidies.
I'm afraid we are going to have to leave it there, but Alexandre Koberle of the Grantham Institute in London, thank you very much indeed.